everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, and I am here. I feel like I should sing raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens. Because I've been gathering up my favorite things from 2017. Now, this is not my favorite decks, my all-time favorite decks. This is simply in each kind of category that I have. It's 5 what I want to say are influential decks this year for one reason or another. Mostly along the concept of they're ones that I really either used a lot or for some maybe a specific reason they stand out in some way of all the decks. I have a lot of decks. I use a lot of my decks. I love a lot of my decks. I have other favorite decks. I have a video of my top 10 like pieces of my soul decks from whatever that time was. Of course, that always shifts and changes, but I've got that. I've got videos like that. This is really just based on 2017 and decks, 5 decks from 5 tarot, 5 oracle, 5 kind of Lenormand Kippery kind of decks, and 5 other decks that for whatever reason stand out for 2017. It's not my top 5 favorites of all time. I just want to clarify that because I had to figure out how was I going to do this. So I have to say, I'm going to go fairly quickly. I'm going to try to go fairly quickly. Jeopardy Tarot. This was sort of a surprise deck, and I think it was more of a surprise deck of last year, but it continued in this year, and I really love this deck. It's a great deck for, I'm a professional reader. I have clients. I read for clients. It is part of my, my job. And so decks that work really well for others probably factor fairly strongly in a lot of these choices. And this is a deck that I didn't really expect to love as much as I did. I don't really like clowns. But it reads beautifully. It's kind of become sort of my neutral deck. That if there's not a deck that says you have to use me for one reason or another, which is very often the case, but if there's not a particular reason, I often go to the Jeopardy, especially a big chunk of the year. Currently, my sort of central deck I'm really using a lot of is we're going to talk about that in a minute. But a lot of this year I use the Jeopardy Tarot, and I think it reads really gorgeously. It looks beautiful on the table. It goes beautifully with my Lenormand deck, which is important when I'm doing 3 voices and things. This was a surprise deck. I got this deck more out of curiosity. I really thought it was interesting. I liked the look of the tides. For the cups, the tide suit is really powerful, and there were some of the images that were just whoa. So I really just wanted to kind of have it more of as a collectible piece, and I wasn't expecting it to become such a reader for me. So I really love the Jeopardy Tarot, and I'm sure somebody's going to say I'm not saying it right. I've heard it all different ways. I've been told all different ways. I apologize to Nino Jeopardia for slaughtering their name. I have to say the Pagan Otherworlds. Now, the Pagan Otherworlds is a deck in which I was watching for about a year before it came out and was so excited about it, beyond excited about it. And then when it came close, when you could actually order it, I sat down and looked at it, and I was disappointed with it because there were lots of dead animals everywhere, like animal skins. And I don't know. I just had a moment of, oh no, this is not for me, right? And so I didn't actually end up picking it up. And then later on, Patrick sent me his copy after he had a chance to kind of play with it and look at it. He wasn't going to use it, so he sent it on to me, and it ended up being a really amazing deck for me this year. Because as you know, if you follow my channel, and the other reason I was so disappointed was that the minors, I was really expecting them to be, I knew they were going to be pips, and I was kind of thinking, this is going to be this gorgeous Marseille style deck, and yet the pips are almost identical to Rider-Waite-Smith. They are Rider-Waite-Smith minus the people for the most part. I mean, very, very clearly. So that was really disappointing to me. But I have to say that they're neutral enough and yet recognizable enough as some of the basic Rider-Waite energy that it makes it a very wonderful bridge for client readings, because I enjoy reading with pip decks. Not everybody likes to or enjoys pip decks and not necessarily wants pip decks as their reading. But this one is enough of a recognizable energy of Rider-Waite-Smith and yet still open enough as a pip deck that it's a beautiful, beautiful bridge for client readings. I found it to be a really wonderful bridge, and it really allowed me or opened me up to trying and having fairly good success. Not 100%. Some people just don't really like pip decks, but it really did kind of open that doorway for me to use pip decks, not just in my personal readings but also in professional readings, which is a big deal for me. It's a big deal for me. So I definitely have to say the Pagan Otherworlds. I do, I can't, is this one of them? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, this is what I was occasionally will use as the pip deck for clients as well, as it's probably my most used. Not in 2017, it would have to be the Pagan Otherworlds, would have been my most used pip deck. But this is definitely a second. But I was kind of going back and forth on what I was going to do. So that's not one of my 5. I did keep the decks strictly to 5. So that's 1, 2. The next one has to be, and is currently on my table, the Darkness of Light Tarot. Is it Darkness of or Darkness in? I think the box is over here. The Darkness of Light Tarot. This is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Very, very clearly one, but still has leaves some opening for the way that I interpret certain cards. And I just love it. It's just gorgeous. It's beautiful paired with the Fountain Tarot. It's just beautiful. The artwork to me is simply stunning. I've used it in a lot of my year ahead readings for clients because it looks amazing on the table. Again, it's very recognizable. It's just a beautiful deck. And I'm not a huge Rider-Waite-Smith fan in terms of using a strict Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And this is pretty Rider-Waite-Smith, but I just love it. I love the artwork. I love its energy. This is the kind of my neutral deck at the moment that is sitting on my table. So I have to say Darkness of Light. Again, I didn't expect that whatsoever. In fact, I remember when Patrick first showed it to me, I was like, no. Yeah, no, we don't need that. It's just a Rider-Waite-Smith, another Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which again, I'm not opposed to, but I just didn't need any more like that. And then so that's what happens. So 3, if you count the Japardia Tarot, which I bought, but just as a collectible, the Pagan Otherworlds and the Darkness of Light, those are 3 decks that I would have said, they're interesting and I like to see them and they're pretty or whatever, but they weren't going to be big readers for me, and actually became quite big readers for me. So that is interesting. The my current favorite, along with the Darkness of Light, is the Tarot of the Sevenfold Mysteries. This deck, I love this deck. I love using this deck for client readings. This and the Darkness of Light Tarot are probably the 2 that I use the most with client readings. While this does have other names to it, it's very recognizable. It's almost like it's this perfect blending. You do see some Rider-Waite-Smith, but you see changes, and you see nods to more classic mindset and classic things, but again, you do definitely see Rider-Waite-Smith. It's like this beautiful marriage, and it's not a pip deck, but it is just like this 4 of coins, which I have a bit of problems with Rider-Waite-Smith. I can read this beautifully, sort of planting as a time to hold on to your resources, stable resources that are then going to be able to come up and grow from that stability. So some people might read that as, he's burying his coins like the Bible story. Instead of using them, he's burying them. He's the foolish son in the Bible parable. But I can read this in a way in which works really well for me. It's just beautiful. And it does have some really pip-like cards. It's just a gorgeous, here's my chariot card is Psyche, which is my birth card. It's just gorgeous. I mean, it's simply beautiful, and I have been reading a lot of, using this a lot since I haven't had this super long, but since having it, I have used it so much with both for myself and for client readings. So, huge fan of this deck. Huge fan of this deck. So I had to pick that one. And can I get that in? Yes. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. One more. And that's what I was struggling with the Ancient Italian Tarot. Again, these are not my top 5 favorite decks. Well, some of them, they kind of fit. This certainly fits. And I really love this one. So those, and I don't know if they would call them my top of all time decks. This one probably will get there. I'm not sure. But these are just decks that one reason or another, I've used them a lot. They've surprised me in some way, that kind of thing. And so I really struggle with this 5th one because, again, I have a lot of tarot decks and I love them all for different reasons. I have a Tarot of the Crone. I'll talk about that in a later because I'm going to do a top 5 that I'm looking forward to working with in 2018. So I'll talk about that later. So there's a lot of decks that I have and I enjoy and that I love, but I'm really trying to keep this 5 and for a reason. The other one that I'm going to say is Tarot of the Healing Light. I've had this since beginning of September-ish, I think. Annika sent this to me for my birthday. And my friend Annika, she has a channel called Quilfin. And this is not a deck that I particularly like the visuals on. I mean, it's fine. It's a little bit busy for me. I don't tend to like super busy stuff. So it's a little bit busy there. But they are quite beautiful and silhouette-y, and there is something high energy about them. I have used this for clients. I still haven't done a walkthrough. I need to. I've used this for clients a lot. Not as much as the other 2 that I've talked about. But the thing about this deck is that I feel like it's just done something new with these mandorlas, which is, a mandorla is where 2 circles, when they intersect, they create this kind of oval shape in the middle. That is the mandorla. And in this deck, the mandorla seems to highlight the key part of the card, or often it is the part of the card that will help to inspire or induce healing or movement forward. And I think it's brilliant. I actually think it's brilliant. And I've done a lot of readings where following the, if I've done it in 9 card readings that I do, and following sort of the path of where the mandorla is and where mandorlas are sort of mirroring each other and things has been fascinating. So I actually think that this thing that they have done within this deck, of adding this layer of where this mandorla intersects, I think is really smart, and has made it a deck that visually is not one I probably ever would have picked up, just because, again, it's a little busy for me. It's kind of high energy. Yeah, it's kind of, it's more digital style art. It's busy. It's a little bit hyperactive to my eyes, but I really love what they've done here. I find it very fascinating, and I've had some very interesting readings with that extra layer there. So I think they've done something that fascinates me. So I had to point this one out. It's definitely not one I've used as much as these other ones by any means, but there's just something about this deck and something about that concept of the mandorla that just stands out to me still since I've had it, which was about by the end of August, beginning of September. Because I remember it being about a month or so before my birthday, and she just sent it off because she didn't want me to pick it up. So, so I know it's been, September, October, November, so 4 months out of the year. So we'll see what happens with it in 2018, but I had to at least mention it. So those are my 5 tarot decks. That brings us to Oracle decks. Now, that's a little bit more difficult because I do tend to just pull randomly from oracles, and they're very often just a card that I'll pull at the end of another reading, and so that can really vary. However, there's no way for me to do a recap of 2017 without talking about the Lavish Earth Crystal Affirmation cards. since I had received this deck, I have not stopped using this for client readings. It's just an amazing deck for me. As I say to all, every time I use it, it's got crystals, which I love, and it has quotes, which I love. It's got crystals and quotes. Who can ask for anything more? Who can ask for anything more? I love this deck. I have used it with countless client readings at the end of the reading, and people have either used, like, gotten a tumble of whatever came up for them and kind of worked with it while they were working with the situation that the reading was on, or if they were not into crystals as much, they would kind of post up the quote to themselves to keep that in mind. I got such amazing feedback over the kind of wrapping up with these cards. So in terms of most used Oracle deck with clients readings, this would be hands down the deck that I've used the most, and it's still on my table, and it's not going anywhere because I'm always pulling a card for somebody with this deck. So that was a no-brainer. One that was surprising and it was the cosmic reading cards. Jen sent these to me. She was kind of cleaning out her collection, and so she had sent these to me, and I had never heard of them. They now have since come out in the United States. This was from Rockpool Publishing, which is an Australian company, but you can now get them in the US. So I hadn't even heard of them at all when I got them. And when I first saw the backs, I'm not a huge fan of the backs. And so when I first saw the backs, I was like, you know, I don't know where this is going, because I didn't know anything about the deck whatsoever. And the back's just not my favorite. I don't know why, because I love abstract art, but I don't know, for whatever reason, it was just, again, maybe just too busy. I don't know. I have no clue. But I just remember thinking, you know, again, I opened the box and I was like, you know what, I'm not sure where this is going. I love this deck. It is definitely more of sort of a digital art style. It looks like that was kind of the back, but maybe up just the blue portion. I don't know. But anyways, I have just gotten really amazing readings from this deck. I think art style, some of them are amazing to me. Like this Intuition, I think is gorgeous. Then some are different. They're a little bit more of the simplistic art style here, which is lovely. Then some are very, almost have a little bit of a feeling like Susan said in Bolay. Some feel a little bit more graphic. Some feel, again, more Susan said in Bolay, or even a little Marge Pierce. That's the author I love. Margaret Peterson. So there's kind of some different styles. That kind of feels a little Sacred Rebels. But I have to say, I've just gotten consistently really, this Balance card is amazing. This Transformation card is amazing. So I wouldn't say it's my favorite Oracle deck of all time in terms of the visual. Some of them are very much like my Shamanic Healing Oracle cards. It definitely has a mix of things. But just in terms of reading, like looks like a card from a little bit like the Chronicles of Destiny. Like I just feel like I love this Mother Earth one. But I don't know. This is a little bit like Aboriginal art, which is from Australia. There's just something about this deck that I've just gotten really amazing readings with time after time after time. It just surprised me. I'd never even heard of it. And so I do use it for clients, and it does really well. I've used it for live chat readings with Oracle cards, and it always just seems to be on point. It was just one of those that was, you know, I had no clue. I never would have purchased it because I didn't even know it existed. And it's just, I just really like this deck. So I had to point that one out. Then these other three, I think, are really important on a personal level, but also in ways in which I think is important to note, just in terms of my professional reading as well. And that would be the Weaver's Oracle, which is absolutely stunning. For me, this is a bibliomancy deck, and I know that is not the intention of the creator. This is just for me personally. The art is stunning, and I do not say this in any way to denigrate the art, because it is beyond gorgeous. But for me, just sitting and looking at these cards, while I might look at Grandmother Turtle and I may start to, feel the feels of these different power feels. This is a power feels deck. And I may have the power feels of surrounding this deck by the image. For me, it's their story. So each of them have a story. And so in the reading that I do, which is called, I think it's called a web reading, which is a reading that I was working with quite a lot myself personally, but I could never find that anchor. And the Weaver card became the anchor, and the story becomes the anchor for the rest of, because I use a few decks, the next two in which I'm going to talk to you about. But it just anchored that particular reading, and it really just evokes so much just in terms of the story. So, stunning deck. It really is a personally powerful deck for me. It taps into my personal practice in a very powerful way. And it brought a kind of a crossover of my personal practice a little bit more into my professional practice. So I have done tarot readings, Lenormand readings, oracle readings of the more synchronistic type. Somebody has a question, you lay the cards and you have the answer. Now, a lot of those are general readings, which I love to do. What is the universe, kind of, what do I need to hear right now? It's one of my favorite things to do. But this deck in particular, as well as this other one that I'll talk about next, and the other one, they're very powerful, have allowed me to do a little bit more, or offer readings that are a little bit more tugging from what I consider the web, where it's sort of less about a question and more about what is a power message that is kind of coming through. So it's a different type of reading that was much more of my private practice, that has then, these decks have allowed that to be voiced in such a way that I could offer those in my professional life as well. So that to me has been a powerful shift in 2017. Thanks to, in much part to, these three decks that I'm talking about. So this is called the Weaver's Oracle by, I don't even have the box here because it's never put away. Carolyn, I was going to say Catherine. Carolyn Hillier. Oh, goodness. And it's also my most expensive deck that I've ever purchased. Certainly Oracle deck that I've ever purchased. But because of the impact on my personal practice and also being able to use it in my professional practice, it is well worth the money to me. And, everybody has to work those things out for themselves. I've heard a lot of, well, that's so expensive. Like, yeah, it is. But we're talking about 30 years of somebody's life painting and writing. And I think it's a well-deserved compensation, in my opinion. The next one is, let's see. I think I got this one next. And you can see they're all kind of edged the same. But this is the Shaman's Oracle by John Matthews and Will Kingham. And this is one that I have wanted for a while. This is the second edition. There was a first edition. I went to go buy it earlier in the year, I think. And it's always been on the back of my mind to get, and just never got around to it. When I went to go do it, it was out of print. But I had heard that it was going to be coming back, so I didn't look for an out-of-print edition and just waited, and they have released the second edition. Not the greatest cardstock in the world, but I love this deck. It is based on actual cave paintings recreated. So kind of recreated with the vibrancy that they think might have been there originally, but they are the actual, most of them. I know there's one that was problematic, but most of them are based on actual cave paintings, if not all of them, but they are redone. They are not just a photograph of that painting, if that makes sense. But for me, the images have far less to do than the system. The system of the suits that are here, the dancers, the hunters, the ancestors, the spirits, the shamans. I have just found this to be a powerful, powerful reading. And it's part of what created me putting in a full, 2 full oracle deck. Well, the web reading does have 3 tarot, but that's not the main part of the web. And then my ancestor reading is just oracle between this and the next deck. So in my personal practice, and again, as well as powerful experience in my professional practice, this deck, I just love this deck. And again, for me, it's the images are really nice, and some of them are real powerful. But it has for me, it has very little to do with the images and much more to do with the system that I really have just clicked into place and really love the system. So that one for sure. And then in the same category as those two, and used in both of those two readings that I've referred to, is the Devas of Creation. And this was a birthday present by Miss Bella. Look at that beautiful one. This deck is just stunning. It is. This is one of those that when I received it, I thought I should have bought this a long time ago. I'd had it recommended to me. I know that Annika, my friend Annika, had told me that I would love this deck. I think the reason that I didn't is because I had picked up the Soul cards, one, I believe. And I thought those were really going to resonate with me, and they didn't. It just didn't quite click with me. I know people love that deck, and it is a beautiful deck, so it's not anything against the deck, but for whatever reason, it just didn't really click with me. This deck was everything that I thought that I would click with the Soul deck. And the way that it connects to that combination of understanding of science, because there's magic in science, right? There's an amazing things going on in the world of science. So it kind of connects the science and the DNA strand with the spirits and the devas combination in a beautiful and powerful way. And I love this deck. I use it for myself. I use it with again, it works beautifully for me with my own Lenormand decks, which is important to me. It's just beautiful. And it's kind of a core part of my web reading and a core part of my ancestor reading and a core part of my personal readings. I love this deck. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's powerful. It reads amazingly, and it's definitely one of the ones that I'm like, oh, I wish I would have had this, before. But, things come into your life when they come into your life, and you just live with it. I absolutely love this deck, and it certainly was a sort of a game changer. Again, in sort of crossing that or being a bridge, these three decks, the Shaman's Oracle, the Devas, and the Weaver's Oracle, kind of across more of a bridge of my personal spiritual practice with my divination practice in a way that's been really powerful and a great journey. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was 5 Oracle cards. Taking long, isn't it? Oh well. Okay, so next are more what I call Cartomancy style decks. And this is just me. All cards are Cartomancy, right? So again, this is just a classification. It's a personal classification. They're generally smaller decks, generally more along the sides of playing cards. They're very often associated with playing cards in some form or another. Not always, but things such as Lenormand, Kipper, Sibylla, those types of decks. So I actually have 2 sets of 5. So the first 5 are like Lenormand, Sibylla, Kipper, because those are decks that I use in readings. And so these are just decks that I used the most, so to speak. And so I have to hands down for Kipper, and look how used this is. Can you see that? Look at this. I have used this. This was the original self-produced version, the first edition that came. I have got to order a mass market edition. I'm going to I keep saying that. I mean, look at this. But I actually love it. Now, some of this is not the fault of Chiro Marchetti, the creator of this deck. When I first got this deck, literally on the first shuffle, Isabel was still little, and I dropped them on the ground, and she just pounced, and she slobbered, and she chewed all of them. They have little, look at this, but they're so sweet. They have little tiny, I don't know if you can see, but there's little tiny baby Isabel teeth in almost every single one of the cards. I had just edged them and she slobbered all over them. They hadn't set good enough at that point because I literally just kind of picked them up and it was just one of those bad things that happened. It was not cheap. It was like a $45 deck. It wasn't the mass market one. $45 for me for a Kipper deck, a 36 card deck. I was like, that's a lot. And so I was just horrified. So the combination of her chewing and slobbering and such, and the amount I use it, I have found Kipper readings to really resonate with people. I have a regular Kipper reading that I do. I have a Get There reading, which is based on a Kipper reading, and an expanded Kipper reading that has that Get There reading plus 6 tarot cards. Those are actually quite, people really enjoy those readings. I have used the heck out of this deck. I have there's not as many Kipper decks available by far, nowhere near as Lenormand. I have the Mystical Kipper. I have the original Kipper, but this is my favorite. My only downside to this deck is the fact that the size. To me, it should be a poker or bridge size playing card, period. I wish that the size was regular size Kipper. But I don't do very often grand tableaus. If I do, then I'll use one of those other ones that I have. Mostly I use, again, a traditional counting method or these specific readings. So it doesn't hamper my using this deck. But I would say, other than, I know I recently used the Kipper or the Mystical, maybe. I think I recently used a Mystical, but other than that, every single Kipper reading that I've done this year has been done with this deck. So there's no way I could not mention this Kipper deck. Sibylla, I've had Sibylla decks. This is why I don't use this particular deck. This is so pretty. My friend Bart had got an auction, I think, of a couple Il Menigalo decks, and one that he had wanted for himself. And one of them was this older style version with the tide of the Sibylla Original from 1890. It's a reproduction of that by Il Menigalo. And so it's so pretty, I wanted to show it. But I mostly use this Everyday Oracle, which has the same images that one has, a Vera Sibylla Italiano. So I've had Sibylla, different versions. I have a deck, or I have a video about it. I had a couple versions of Sibylla for quite a while, but I never really used them a whole lot. I have been using this just personally. I'll be probably in January or 2018. I will add this to my reading as an option for readings because people have asked about it. But I've used this pretty consistently now for a good chunk of time on myself, friends, and family, and things of that nature. I like to get used to a system, but really sassy. Really sassy. I love this deck. And the Vera Sibylla Italiano or the Il Menigalo, which again, same images. Those are definitely my favorite. So I had to mention that. For Lenormand, this has been the year of my deck. So of course I'm going to say my deck. This is a gorgeous bag by Bobby. She makes amazing tarot and Lenormand decks bags. But obviously from early, I think it was actually released in June, but I had a test deck of this a good probably maybe 2 months before that, a month or two before that. I used the heck out of that. So since the moment that I got my test deck, I have pretty much, and I do most of my business, half of my business is Lenormand. And truthfully, I think that if I really sat and did the math, I would have more Lenormand business than tarot business. It's pretty half and half. But if anything was to push the thing out, it would be Lenormand. So since that time, I have pretty much exclusively read with my deck. I mean, it makes sense. I was in the middle of painting it and then testing it and using it. Promoting it, selling it, loving it. It's my deck. This is a deck that was painted how I see Lenormand. So obviously that whole process, this has been 2017, has been this for me, has been this from the beginning of 2017 until now, has been all, you know, this whole journey with kind of conceptualizing and painting and producing and going through all of the administrative types of trying to get a deck printed and writing the guidebook and guidebook printing, and then having that shifting over to PDF form, and you know, just all of that. It's been an amazing journey. So, you know, obviously there's just no way for me, you know, and I don't should not feel bad about talking about that, because this has been an amazing, huge part of my year. I mean, I am floored by this whole process of being sort of conceptualizing something to having it in my hand at deck form to sending it off, you know, to all over the place. And I just really appreciate everybody who has been supportive, verbally supportive, who has purchased the deck, but just in general, I've had just amazing support from the community at large, and it's just been a huge process for me. So obviously, in terms of doing Lenormand readings, I almost, you know, 99% of the time I'm using my own deck. It was literally made for me by me, so it makes sense. However, I had to, you know, I have the two other than mine, the two that stands out. I've really been thrilled to have the 1889 Lenormand, because this was before. When I first started reading, it was with the Pyattnik Lenormand, and this was probably, if I not this, but it was called the Game of Hope, and it was a mini deck, and I still have it. That was, I think, my second Lenormand deck. I used that so much. The only downside for me was once I had my full setup, I really didn't need that mini size and really preferred a full size, but by then that was out of print. And so, and then this was in Kickstarter, but then something happened and there was a big year, like a year gap where it just kind of disappeared. And then it showed back up again, I think at the beginning of this year, maybe I got this in January, I can't remember. But for me, this is more of like a coming home deck, because I use this so much in the early days, early year, maybe two, I don't know, I'm bad about time. But I use this so much. So it's like a redoing, and most of the cards are the same. There's a couple that are different. I have video up about it. And the backing is the most stunning backing on any Lenormand deck. And so I do use this one if I, you know, again, it's primarily been my own deck. Sorry. But this is one that I will go to because it's such a coming home deck. It's such a beautiful deck. It's just visually gorgeous. It's, again, I love the deck because I spent so much time in the early years of time of reading with Lenormand professionally. I use this a lot in my early professional readings, and so it really does have that kind of feeling of coming home. Anyways, so I just love this deck, and so I had to definitely mention deck. I have used this throughout this year occasionally as well. So I had to mention that one. And then the last Lenormand is a little bit of a newer one for me. It's not a newer deck. It is the Oracle Lenormand by Los Scarabeo. But I really love this deck. There's just something about this, the use of space, or I should say maybe the use of negative space. The use of the height of the card, where pretty much everything is on the bottom, and there's actually quite a lot of empty space where typically there would be probably a playing card here, right? That I don't know, I love it, and it goes with another deck that I'm going to show. It's one of my newest decks, but I still had to speak about it. And there's one upside down. Now the tree fills the whole space, but a lot of the cards, they're down here, and they fill just the bottom part. And I don't know, there's something about that really, and I'm guessing that perhaps these images were created with the intention of having a playing card insert there. That's very possible, but I quite like it. I don't know, there's something about it that I just love. And I've definitely used this in some readings as well. I'll leave this out and talk about this other set. So that was 5, right? So that was Kipper, a Sibylla, and 3 Lenormand decks, which is about right in terms of what I do with those different systems, right? But then I needed 5 of a different category that just kind of don't fit in a specific category for me. 2 of those, the one I'm going to talk to is brand new, but I cannot put this deck down. So this is the Cartas Divinatories de Algario. Slaughter City, I'm sure. This is a French deck. From what I understand, it is being published again by another publishing company. I don't know when any of that's coming out or anything. But it is a French deck. I know that you can get it from the French Amazon. If you really want this and you can't get a hold of it, have patience. It is being reproduced. And from what I understand, the creator, which is Outside Nathaniel, is also working on another deck. I haven't seen any images from that. I have seen some images in the vein of this that weren't used in this deck that I wish were, because they're beautiful. But anyways, this is 32 card deck. So it kind of fits in that Lenormand Sibylla style, but it also is it's a little bit of a Lenormand. People talk about terroricals. This is a little bit of a terror, or a Lenormand. Lenorical? I don't know. It feels like a little bit blend of that Lenormand style. And I know a lot of people say it's technically Sibylla style, but Lenormand for me came first, so that's the Lenormand style. So it has a little bit of that Lenormand style, and yet it feels very different in reading. It's definitely has a deeper, not deeper because Lenormand goes deep, but there's a little bit more of an oracle feel to it. And you're not really doing this whole sentence structure and that kind of thing. It's got a little bit, you can though. It's a beautiful blend of something. It's something else. The only thing that I think is similar to this, but look at this deck. These 2 decks okay, let me get to more of a, that's the only one art-wise I feel like stands out as not being quite the same as the rest, but they just have, they just look beautiful together. This is not a black, it's more of a greens texture edging, where this is black, but they look really stunning together, and I have definitely used them together. So that's, let me put this one away so we can talk about this. So yeah, I cannot put this deck down. I've done quite a few readings for myself and other people, and it's like one of those that just instantly says, hello, I would like to work with you. I have something to say to you. We can work together really well. It's that kind of, instant love. So I've literally not had this long, but I had to put it in here because I haven't stopped reading from it since I've gotten it, which has been very short, but I love it so much. And it's the same sort of energy as the L'Oracle de Reflets. Again, probably slaughtering that, by Celia Melsville, which I believe is this also a French deck, or is this an Italian deck? I believe this is a French deck as well. Same kind of feel of this, where this feels like a Lenormand. It definitely has energy similar to a Lenormand style of Cartomancy style reading. It has cards like the camel and things, but it's also not. It's also kind of oracly. So these 2 decks, I think, have very similar energies. I love this deck. I love the cardstock. Is probably one of my all-time favorite cardstocks. I just love the deck. It gets to the point. I've used it. It's great in Get There readings, where you're trying to tell that story. Other one that's real good for Get There readings, and is also kind of Lenormand, is the Chronicles of Destiny, which is a must-have for me. This is my cubicle of Oracle decks I have to have because I use them in my business readings, and Chronicles of Destiny is here. So again, this isn't that these 5 are my all-time favorites and no others are. It's just for whatever reason this year they've really stood out. And so in terms of kind of others, these 2 for sure. The other that would go in that category would be a Deste deck. You know, it is kind of, it's a Cartomancy style deck. It has a chunk of the cards are very much Lenormand like, you know, where you have, you know, the key, and you have the camel, and you have the flowers. So you have cards that are very similar, a chunk of cards that are very similar to, say, a Lenormand style deck. But then it also has a full court system. It has a full elemental system. So it's kind of like a combination. If you look at the elemental cards as the aces, it has the full court system, but it also has horses and djinns. It's got a very strong elemental structure to it, which, if you know me, that's a huge deal. So it's got light and shadow in it. It uses reversals. This is the Turkish version. And I just love this deck, and I'm glad this is something I offer in in my shop, and people actually tend to get these. It's not anywhere near obviously the same as Lenormand or tarot, but I do get consistent readings for it, and I really enjoy using it. And it's got its own spread, you know, like the Lenormand has a grand tableau, and Kipper I do with a counting method. Deste has its own spread, and I use that. And so I had to mention this because it's one that I use consistently. So for sure, that's kind of in the other category, and it's definitely a bit of a, I can't do it anymore, but it's a little bit of a blend of Lenormand and tarot. And then playing card decks. I love playing cards. I got a bunch of new ones over here, but I have to say the two that I've used the most this year have been the Arcana Tarot playing cards. Now I have the full, and that's one of my favorite tarot decks. I use it all the time in my past life readings. This is the white one I have is just the playing deck for when I'm doing playing, but it's just so beautiful. I mean, it's a stunning deck, and the backs are stunning. So I would call this probably I would say this would be my primary playing card reading, although again, I have some new beauties that I've been playing with. But this one, which is again, playing card and Sibylla, are two I have to add in for 2018 into my practice. I don't know why I haven't had playing cards, because that's probably the oldest system that I read with. But I'm in the middle of working on a video about playing card reading. But the other one that I really love is this Bicycle Hessler's Enhanced Playing Cards. I love this deck. It has 4 colors. So look at the colors here. So the hearts are red. The clubs, which look like clovers, right, are green. The spades are blue, and the diamonds are yellow. And there's history of there being 4 colors in the suits as well. And they're just beautiful. I love the font on the sides of them. They're colorful. They really stand out in a reading. You really do get the scope of, you know, what are the variations of suits there. Instead of just blacks and reds, you have really definingly see how many of one suit that you have. They're just really beautiful cards. So I really enjoyed this. I saw this, I think, on somebody's Instagram and ordered it instantly, or it was Facebook. I can't remember, but I adore this. I need to start a hunt for other playing card decks that use 4 colors for the suit. So in terms of playing cards, those are probably the ones I've used the most. Although again, I have some other ones that I do use. So those would be my 5 sort of others, and that wraps up the cards. Now, okay, going through all of that, and obviously I think all of those decks will continue into 2018. I have other decks that I use. Again, when you try to narrow things down to 5, you just get what I just tried to not overthink things. But I do have a lot of decks that I want to work with going into 2018 that are newer decks. I actually have quite a few decks to do walkthroughs of that I haven't really cracked the boxes to really kind of see where I'm going to go with those and that kind of thing. So there's decks on the horizon that who knows what 2018 is going to bring. But some that I have that I really want to right away start to work with I've had actually the Prisma Visions for a while, but I felt like it felt very winter for me. And winter, we are snow heaven here right now. And so I definitely want to put some time into giving this a go. I'm not a huge fan of the sword suit. In my first impressions, I'm not a huge fan of the sword suit. I can't really even remember if I've done a while. I think I did. I don't know if I published it or if I messed up the footage. I had a few that I messed footage up, so I need to go check and see. My first impressions of the sword suit, because that's my suit, I wasn't totally feeling it, but I have done some readings with this and really loved it. So I want to give this one more of a chance. So this one I want to work on in the winter. I have to talk about this one as a honorable mention, but I'll get back to that. Tarot of the Crones I have not had for very long, and but I had a very powerful reaction to it. Any polls I've done with it have been really powerful. So I definitely want to do some work with this moving right into 2018. I have two Marseille ones that are very similar. They're not similar in size. Or, one's a historical and one's a modern interpretation. But they're both, this is a Bolognese Marseille deck, which is the Fina della Torre. I screwed up the footage on this. I have to redo the walkthrough of this. I just put this one up recently. This is a Bolognese style Marseille deck in beautiful pastel colors. It's absolutely stunning. This is a modern deck. The Marshmallow Marseille is a modern deck that is drawn off of inspiration by a Bolognese deck. And you can definitely tell the similarities, and the pastel palette is also there. So these are two new decks. This is a Christmas present. Both of them are Christmas presents. So I will definitely be working with these two decks going right into 2018. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I guess I would take as the last one, I've got a lot of new to me decks. This is an older deck, but it's a new to me deck. This is the Petra Kay. I haven't done a walkthrough yet, and because I just haven't gotten around to it, but there's something really intriguing about this deck to me, and I'm really drawn to giving it a try and working with it. I've got to do obviously a walkthrough first, but there's just something about this deck. Maybe it's, again, the color palette. I don't know. There's some differences in the minors that I quite like. It is a Pippish deck, but it's got a lot of energy going on, sort of like a Thoth Pip, in that there's a lot of color and energy going on. And so I'm really interested in, A, getting a walkthrough done of it, and B, working with it. So this is called the Petra Kay Tarot. And so that is definitely, those would be 5. I have more than that. But those would be 5 that I know right off the bat of 2017 that I want to be doing some work with it. And the last one is, I was looking at because I had it down here so I didn't see it. I'm going to sneeze again. I have to give Santa Muerta, I have to give an honorable mention to my 5 tarot decks. But because I haven't used this at all for clients, so I haven't used it a lot in terms of client work, this one was a surprise. I bought this more because I was interested to see what it was doing. And much like with the Healing Light Tarot, I was really impressed with what was done with those mandorlas. It was just something new and fresh. That's similar with the Santa Muerta. What was done with the minors and the progression of the minors for this deck, I think is really beautifully done and fresh and focused. There's a lot of attention, I think, that was paid to the minors in a way that I was quite blown away by, and I have used this for personal work consistently since I've purchased this. And so this was definitely a surprise of 2017. I expected it was just like, oh, that's going to be a neat, interesting deck, and it ended up being really powerful. So those decks are always interesting when you don't expect, right, the impact that they're going to have, and quite a few of my tarot ones did. So when I was pulling out the winter ones, I was like, oh shoot, that was over here, so it didn't even cross my brain, so I had to slide that one in at the end. So I'm done. Those are my 5s and 5s and lots of sets of 5s and a couple honorable mentions, and I hope that you enjoyed this and that you have an absolutely wonderful day.